Hello and welcome to another one of my videos. It's Leanne here, and today we're making this unicorn cloud hanger that's sort of like a sun catcher with epoxy resin and wood. Now the first thing I'm doing is mixing my epoxy here. It's a 50-50 mix, and I preheat one part of my resin until it's of the temperature of coffee, and then I add my second part in, and that really does away with a lot of the bubbles. I'm going to lay down a really thin first layer in clear in my mold. This is a mold I've had for many years, so excuse the state of it. It's one I made myself. And I'm going to just put down my clear layer so I can start adding my embellishments, my dream beads and other sort of sparkles for this rainbow catcher. As you can see, there are literally no bubbles in my resin because it was hot enough and thin enough that the bubbles just dispersed on their own. I'm just going over my resin piece with a lighter, and this takes any bubbles that have risen to the surface and just pops them. Just try not to spend too much time with your flame against your plastic mold because it will melt it. Now I'm placing in my dream letter beads. These are just cheap craft beads and they may look upside down and backwards to you, but that is how you have to place them in so that when your mold is cured and you turn it over, they are the right way and they are reading the word as it should be read. I'm just arranging these. Now normally when I put letter beads in resin, I try to make it really shallow so they do not float and move around, but I wanted to make this unicorn in just 2 layers, so I'm just going to have to babysit these beads until the gel stage starts to happen. It's not that hard to babysit the beads, there's not a lot of inclusions here that I need to watch, so it's no big deal. I'm adding here some metal shards to the horn and the hoof area. This is sort of like a glitter, but it's made from like a thin metal, and I'm not too concerned about it spreading into the other parts of the resin here because the look I'm going for, I didn't want it too precise and neat. I just wanted to add some sparkle. So I'm actually mixing them into my resin as I pour them on. I'm not just leaving them to sit on the surface because they're quite heavy, they'll sink anyway. And I noticed that the horn needed a little topping up with some resin. I'm just adjusting my beads. Normally when I do beads in resin, I do a much thinner layer and let these cure by themselves first, but I decided I was making this unicorn in only a couple of layers because I've got so many other steps to do for this project. And I just added some iridescent little balls, they're not quite micro marbles, they're the next size up, around my dream word, just so that when you do see it from the other side, it'll have all these little nice embellishments in the first layer of resin. This clear layer is really just adding the details that will be subtle when you turn your piece over, but make all the difference to how sparkly and gorgeous it will be in the end. I'm adding some little iridescent stars here. It's hard to pick up on camera because they are quite small and they are very subtle in colour. Everything I will be using for this layer now will be either iridescent, translucent, or just very subtle because I want the main attraction to be the actual word dream, and then when I come to my colouring layer. Now I'm adding these large hearts and shapes that are in iridescent. I think I got these from an old Sophie and Toffee box. I've had them for a very long time and they are sort of assorted. I think there might be little moons and stars in there too. I'm just spreading these out across the whole unicorn to add extra shimmer in this look. Now I keep checking my dream beads because, as I said before, this is quite a thick resin layer and they do keep floating, but as long as you babysit them for a little while until the resin starts to gel up, then you should actually be fine. You just keep adjusting them, fixing them, and eventually they will stay in place. I'm just spreading them out a little bit, adding them where I think it is sparse and needs a little bit more. I apologise if you hear coughing in the background. Everyone in my house has been really sick for the last week and a half, and my little boy is absolutely dying with this horrible flu bug. So if you hear him coughing, he is actually in another room. He just can't help it. Okay, so at this point I think I just picked up anything that I had that was translucent and added them, sort of scattered them over the piece before adding the gold stars. I wanted something that would stand out a little bit more than everything else and just add a little shine and a little bit of the gold, sort of tying in the horns and the hoof. So I just spread these gold stars that I have just around the word itself. I didn't put them any further than the word. Okay, because I just can never leave anything alone and I never have enough sparkle, I'm adding these little square mirror pieces. They are shiny mirror metallic on one side and white on the back, so I'm just making sure I put the mirror side down towards the front of my piece. You know, you can never have too much sparkle in anything, and I am a glitteraholic and I have to have sparkle in every way. I can never have anything just too simple. It always has to be more. Okay, as a last little touch, I add a little scattering of iridescent white glitter to the back of the entire piece because I've finally decided I've done enough, and I'm just scattered that over very lightly. Okay, so I've left this for a couple of hours, so by now my piece has gone to that jelly tacky stage where it's firm but not quite cured. I'm taking mica pigments in rainbow pastel and I am going to work across my unicorn in rainbow colours. I started with the green there. I think next I move to the yellow. Maybe, yep, the yellow. So I'm going to work from either side of the green, just going in the order that rainbows are in, and I'm going to put a really thin, gentle layer with a really fluffy brush of mica powder across my resin piece. Now, a good way to test if your resin is ready yet is just to take a cocktail stick and touch the surface. If your resin dents very easily, that is the perfect time to apply your mica, but you have to do so with a very gentle hand. You have to lightly brush it across, because if you push the brush too hard, it will stick into the resin. If you wait too long, your resin won't be sticky enough to keep the mica either. So I'm just applying all my colours, a really thin layer here. I've added the purple to each end to finish off and start my rainbow over again. I'm just moving all my mica powders out of the way so that I can get rid of the excess by taking my mould and tapping it off. So a little trick I learned in all the years that I've been doing resin is when you've done your first layer, run a lighter across it. What this does is this sort of animates the resin and makes it go a little bit liquid again, which pulls the mica just into the surface, and you can apply a second layer straight away. It basically makes the surface sticky again. So I do this 2 or 3 times at this stage, because you'll notice it slightly, it starts to build the colour to be a little bit stronger. If you do it with just one layer, your colours are not going to be that strong. And between each layers I tap off the excess. As you can see, it is getting stronger, it's getting more sort of pearlescent. Okay, so now that I've done that, I can go straight to my back layer. You don't really have to wait on the resin curing anymore. If it's strong enough to take the mica pigment, it's strong enough to take your final layer of colour. So I'm mixing my 50-part resin here, and I don't really have to worry about bubbles in this layer because we're going to be making an opaque colour. I'm going for a white because basically white makes everything pop behind it. Because we've used such pale pigments in the rainbow colours, I want something to sort of boost those colours when you look from the front. And white is the perfect background colour for that. Okay, this paste here I've had for literally 7 years. This is white resin paste. I got it on eBay so long ago and it has lasted me since forever. I mean, 7 years and I use it constantly, and I've used a third of the tub. I think it was only about £5 on eBay. So you add just the tiniest amount on the end of the stick. As you can see, it's pretty opaque, and that was me only adding just a tiny amount. I'm adding my white iridescent glitter to make my back sparkly, which is kind of redundant because in the end you don't see the back of this unicorn at all, but you know, I have to have glitter and everything. It's kind of the law in this house. So I'm mixing up my resin really well, and on goes the final layer. Now this is pretty much how I always do my resin pieces, in 2 steps. When I make brooches it's slightly different, but I can minimise most resins into 2 layers using the mica powder step instead of a colourant step, which is a really good trick to know. Okay, I've just spread it out really thin, tried not to overfill my mold. and I'm just leaving it to dry and just attacking some of the bubbles that have come to the surface with a lighter. It doesn't really matter about the bubbles in this layer though, as I said, you're not going to see this layer once the piece is assembled. Okay, so it's been 8 hours, and well actually it was the next day, and I'm now demolding my piece. This is always the exciting bit. This is when you see exactly how badly you've made it, or in my case, how pretty it is. It is really cute, I have to admit, I really like it, but I'm still not done. First of all, I'm going to trim off all the overpour, which unfortunately happens when you're as clumsy and enthusiastic with resin as I am. I'll trim it away with just some little scissors, just to save on how much time I'm going to be sanding the piece. Just getting into all those little crevices, as close to the resin as possible without actually cutting into the shape. Trimming all the extras. It's easier to cut from the back of your resin piece when it's a sort of little narrow area to get into for some reason. I don't know why, it just is. And then I'm sanding it down. Sanding is the most boring step, but the most necessary, because it will turn your piece into something fabulous instead of something half polished and a bit scruffy. So take the time to sand your pieces, not enough people do. Okay, so here we have a semi-finished resin piece. I say semi-finished because I'm not done yet. Now I want to make his tail and his mane sort of more prominent. I could have done that in my layers in my resin, but I like to do this stage after on this mould. Quite often I'll paint this mould with acrylic paint, but right now I'm using UV resin and the same mica powders to mix up sort of more solid versions of the colours I used in the mould, and this will really make a difference. This will be a sweet added detail, and it means I can define the colours a little bit better. So I start with the lilac and I make sure I go right down to the edges to cover any sort of rough edges that were left from sanding. It's a good way to finish a piece if you are not going to be putting this onto something the way I am. Moving to the blue, and I'm really just going to do this for every colour. I think the tail I do lilac, blue and green, and just really get right up against the rump of the unicorn and fill in where its back leg joins the tail. I mean, that right now that area is not well defined as you're looking at it on the video, but once I put the green in you'll see it stands out a lot better, and it's just another way that you can finish a resin piece. The great thing about UV resin is I don't need to wait another 8 hours. I can literally chuck it in my lamp for a 5-minute cure and it's done. As you can see, the tail is standing out a bit better. Okay, so I'm going to do the same for its mane. I'm going to mix 3 colours, the orange, the pink and the yellow, and I'm going to do the same again for the mane. I'm just going to use my little spoon tool. These tools are great. These are actually UV resin tools. You get a set of 2 of them. I think Sophie and Toffee were the first ones that were selling them, but now you can get them on AliExpress and eBay. It just takes a little bit of looking for them. I think they're called a UV resin duo tool set. Okay, there goes the orange. Just touching up my pink again where it accidentally dripped some orange on. And there goes the yellow. And the little blue torch off to the side is just a little UV torch for spot curing my UV resin without me having to walk all the way over to my lamp in between. I have a resin lamp that sits across the other side of my room, so this is perfect for when I'm working at my desk. Okay, I noticed that I needed a little extra sanding, touching up the hair where I didn't do a good job of defining the line, another spot sort of cure, and then I'll go and put it in my lamp. That was the quickest lamp trip ever. As you can see, it's now nice and cured. I'm just having a little extra sand. You can never sand enough. Getting those pieces perfect, it's all about the sanding. And maybe because I'm just a little bit of a perfectionist that has to keep doing these things until I'm happy. Okay, so it's looking cute, but it's not done. Now we have this absolutely glamorous piece of wood which I sketched out and cut all by myself. This is just plywood, and my partner is a joiner and we always have wood lying around, and we also have lots of tools because, as I said, he's a joiner. So he taught me how to use a scroll saw, and I have lots of these wooden pieces for when I'm making random things like this. This is my attempt at a very big cloud. I'm taking some white gesso that I've watered down a little, and I am just going to give this its base coat. I love gesso, it's one of my favourite paints for if I need something to be really white really quickly. It primes everything, it makes it easy to work on. Love gesso, and I'm running out, so I actually need some more. And don't forget the sides. The sides are clearly important. Attention to detail when you're making anything makes a huge difference to how polished it looks at the end. So if the sides are scruffy, then your whole piece is going to look scruffy. Okay, so just getting paint all over my hands, all over my desk, all over everything, just like I always do. Then I'm going to leave it to dry. Okay, and by the power of video, here I am 3 coats later. Now I'm taking mica powder here in a pearlescent, it's a very pale grey, and I'm just going to cover the whole of my white background with this, and this is just to give us a little shimmer when I do apply my resin coat later. It doesn't really do anything right now, but when it's all together later it does give like a sort of shimmer to the piece. And because I'm never happy with things just being simple, I decided to add shading with blue mica powder over my cloud in places where naturally a cloud might have shadows. I don't know, I'm not a cloud, but I assume they do have shadows in the under places. I'm just working it in, and it looks scruffy right now. Yes, it does. I know, I can admit that it looks scruffy, but it will all make sense later on. As you can see, it looks like I've rubbed it on the floor a little. It looks grubby and kind of minging, but it's fine. Now, because I'm going to be using epoxy resin, which takes a long time to cure, I decided I should maybe seal in the blue areas in case it causes the mica powder to lift off the wood and run into the rest of my cloud. Not that you would really notice because it's quite subtle, but you know, it was an excuse for more glitter. Much more glitter, this time in the form of nail varnish. I think I have glitter in its many forms. And now I'm deciding where my unicorn should go, and realising how redundant that shading in the middle of the cloud was because the unicorn is big and covers it. I'm taking a pink Sharpie marker just to get at the edges, because later on I want to give this cloud a pink border around the edges, and I want it to kind of come up under where the resin will be. So I'm just adding some pink in very light strokes, a really thin line all around the edge. And like I said, it's totally redundant me doing this bit because the unicorn covers it. Okay, I'm happy with that positioning, I think it looks good. Now for the fun part. More resin. Yet again, epoxy resin. Now you could use UV resin to do this project. I've tried in the past to make large things with UV resin and I really don't like it. It has a tendency to curl up and not stay flat. I also feel that when you do thick resin, UV resin pieces, they're not as pretty, they don't be as clear and sparkly. I don't know, maybe it's me, maybe it's the brand I've been using, but I always go back to my epoxy resin. So I'm making up more, and once again I'm not really caring about the bubbles in this layer of resin. There's going to be glitter in this which kind of look like bubbles anyway, so I'm not being particular in heating one part of my resin for this part. So I'm mixing it up, and I decide that I am going to add one of my favourite glitters to this piece. Now unfortunately I've been asked where I got this glitter many times. I've used it in a few videos and I made it, I'm afraid to say, so you can't actually buy it. But you could buy all the elements for this glitter, which are basically white iridescent glitter, these neon paper colour shapes, which I think I got on eBay, they're nail art shapes, and some iridescent tiny. I think this was a combination of 3 glitters, the shapes and 2 glitters to make this. But like I said, I made it myself, so I can't really tell you where to buy it, but if you really insist, I could find the 3 glitters that I used and put the links on the blog post about how to make this glitter. I call it my signature unicorn glitter. That's how much I love it. And I use it for everything, so. Okay, I'm just using the rest of my epoxy glitter on the areas of the cloud that are now left exposed after laying my unicorn on top. Now, because my unicorn does come over the edge of my cloud, I'm expecting that there's going to be spillage from my epoxy. It's kind of inevitable when you have a piece coming over the edge like this and you're trying to dome. As you can see, some is already starting to spill. So the best thing to do is to rise your piece up onto something. I think I do it in the next couple of minutes. I put a couple of silicone mixing cups down and lift the piece up, and then babysit your piece while it goes to the jelly stage, which is what I do. I just stay close by, and every so often I'll take a baby wipe and a cocktail stick and just clean off the drips from underneath or anything that's leaking off. Scrape up if it loses too much resin and dump it back on top, because it will start to solidify, it will start to get thicker, and it will stop leaking after maybe 45 minutes to an hour. So you just really have to babysit it for a little while. Okay, once again it is cured by the power of magical video. It is the next day, and now we're on to the sides. So I'm using polyurethane varnish here, which is a glaze, and I'm basically just going to make my own paint. Now, I could have used just acrylic paint for this, but I wanted to try and match the very specific shade of pink that I've used in this project. It's kind of a hard colour to match, so I figured mica powder and glaze would probably be a better way of going about it. So here I am mixing up my mica powder with my varnish. And I think it looks pretty sweet. It's kind of metallic-y, and I'm thinking, yeah, this could be great paint. So I decided I'm going to paint the edges of my piece with this. Now, once I start painting this on, I realise pretty quickly that I've made it a bit thin, that it is literally still like a glaze, and that's not what I was going for. I was going for more of a paint. So in the next couple of minutes, yep, here we go, I come back to the mica powder, I add more mica powder. I decide it's getting a little bit too dark pink compared to the pink that's on the front of the piece. So I add some pale, either grey or white mica powder, I can't remember which. I think it's the pale grey I used. Yeah, it's the grey. I add that and give it a good mix, and this time it is substantially thicker. It does make quite a good paste. I wouldn't really say it's paint consistency, it is quite thick, but it does the trick for what I need it to do. I'm going to paint that around all the edges. Now right now I'm not really concerned with the back of the piece. My sort of concerns are the sides and the front. I don't mind if this goes onto the front a tiny little bit, but I'm trying to wipe it off as I go. So once that's done, I leave that to dry. And I come back with the glaze that I used to make it in the first place and just give that a little coat just to add the shine back, because the mica powder made it a little bit dull. And as everything else is shiny because it's resin, I decided it should match. So I'm just giving that a glaze, not really being particularly neat. And once that is dry, I give the back a light sand here. Now I could have gone to town and made this completely flat, but it's the back, and I'm going to be covering it anyway, so I just give it a light, making sure nothing massive was sticking off, no huge drips or anything. I'm adding some eye screws. I want 2 at the top where I'm going to put a chain for the hanger. I'm kind of just figuring out the position using some really strong glue here. This is actually a relief paste that's meant for gluing things to glass, but I use it for everything. It's literally the strongest glue everything. I glue things to fabric with this and everything. It's called Transparent Relief Paste, and it's by Marabou. Okay, I'm going to put little hooks on the bottom where I want some beads to hang, and there we go, just like that, quick as you're done. I have 2 at the top for the hanging chain and 4 at the bottom for where the beads are going to go. Now I really am going back to acrylic paint this time, and I'm using very baby pink acrylic paint. Figured it was close enough. and I'm going to give this a couple of coats just to hide all the dirtiness and the mess and the variation from wood to, you know, the white paint that you can see there, and just make everything neat. The back of your piece is as important as the front, I found, and spending a little time on the back can make a difference. Like this piece, when it's done, is going to be a gift for somebody, and I don't really want the back of it looking clunky and messy. If it was just for me, I might not care as much, but it is for someone. So okay, this is me getting out the beads. This is me getting out the beads. I am going for the same palette, rainbow colors, as my hanging beads, but as I want this to be quite long, I'm also adding some petals, some transparent beads, and for the ends, these are little clay beads with rhinestones. I'm going to make a chain of beads. Now, I also make jewellery, so this is no big deal to me, but if you do not make things with wire and beads, basically you want a head pin which has a flat end on your base bead, which is the one just did, and then on all the rest that you want to join together, you want to use eye pins which already have a loop at one end. You add your beads and then you make a loop at the other end. So first thing I do is put them in all my beads first. I just find doing things in groups is quicker than doing things one by one. Put the wires in, then cut them all at the same time to the length that I want my little look to be. And then finally take my needle nose pliers and turn the ends over into a loop, and do that for every single one of those beads. The best time to do this is while watching YouTube videos, because it does take quite a while. And once you've got them all like that, a loop on each end, you basically open one loop, attach it to the next one, and string them all together. I use flat pliers for this because, well, the needle nose pliers don't do a very good job. I'm going to start with a jump ring first that I'm going to attach to my cloud just to make it look a little bit more polished. And from that jump ring, I'm going to start adding in order that I have chosen of my beads and rainbow beads. So you just open one eye pin, slot onto the next one, close it again, then go and do it on the other side to the next bead and then the next bead, and make the chain as long as you like. As long as you end the very bottom of your chain with the bead that has a head pin rather than an eye pin, you can make this chain as long as you like. I mean, it is a kind of boring process, but I think it's worth it in the end when you see what it looks like. And there we go, my chain is growing and it's blue. And I just have to do that 3 more times. Ugh. Okay, here we go. Many hours later, I have all my chains. I made 2 extra little ones here to add a coloured chain for this to be hung up. I wanted it in pink, but I had no pink chain left, so I have this sort of rosy, browny, I don't even know what you call that colour. It is slightly pinker than it looks on camera. I figured it would look okay because we have gold tones in the actual unicorn, and it's metallic-y and it's pinky and it's sort of bronzy, I think. So that goes on the top and our 4 chains go on the bottom. And because it's really fiddly, I did it off camera. Now you can actually do this step first if you prefer, but I for some reason decided to attach everything first. This is the final stage and we will be done. Thank goodness, because this has taken 3 days already. I'm mixing up my back layer of resin, not caring about bubbles, it's the back, using my signature unicorn glitter, mixing it all up, and then I'm going to layer it on quite thin on the back. You don't really need to dome the back, you're basically just tidying up, finishing the piece so it can be quite a thin layer. Not so thin though, otherwise it will sort of separate and pull away from the edges. You need to make it thick enough that it's going to stay completely covering, and I've never had an issue with things sticking to acrylic paint. Out with the back of my little spoon. And these are actually coffee stirring spoons I buy in bulk on eBay. I tend to clean them, so I'm probably never going to run out of them. I got about 50 and I clean them as I go and I don't really throw them away. And there we go, cured and finished. There's the back looking all shiny and pretty. There's the front all sparkly. And now for the obligatory finished piece post. Finished piece video, should I say. Fabulous. Outside on a very grey day where it was threatening to rain, but hopefully you can see it. I really love how this piece turned out. I think it may not be somebody's gift, it may be for me. Thank you for watching my video, and if you happen to be somebody who also follows me for my books, I currently have one of my books going free until the 8th of October on Amazon. There will be a link in the blog post that follows this video, so don't forget to check that out. Have a nice day and see you in the next one.